Are Caique parrots loud? Hi, I'm Kaylin, the author of the Parrot Bliss Bond, and in this video, I've got Ketsi, my Caique here. He is a white-bellied Caique, and you can also hear Nikki, who is also a white-bellied Caique. And so, are they loud? Well, my husband thinks that you could have them in an apartment. I feel like if you were like in a townhouse and you were the end unit and your Caiques were housed at the end where there were no shared walls, maybe that would work. To me, they can be loud. When they want to, they sort of get going and they're like, not like this. This wasn't loud. And when they get going, they can be loud. They're not as bad as, of course, some real loud parrots. On a scale from 1 to 10, a 9 and a 10 are going to be like cockatoos. 8, 9 are going to be like Amazons. And who's a 1? Probably like on the other end of the scale, a 1, 2, 3 are going to be little guys, because the smaller the guy, the less noise they can just make. So on that end of the scale, maybe we'd put parrotlets, that kind of thing. And the Caiques, you know, I'm going to say they'd be like a 6, 7. Maybe a 6. They're not break your eardrums. They can be a little much, but you know, I think it also really depends on your lifestyle with them, meaning that if you are not home a lot and you have one Caique and they're by themselves, you know, that you might end up with an unhappy Caique and they might scream a lot. On the other hand, hi Ketsi, if you have 2 or more and they get to spend a lot of time with you, they might not be as loud. So some of that's going to determine it as well, right? Now, I will say this though. I think, now they're getting louder. I do think that one thing that's kind of nice about Caiques is if you are in an apartment with them, they are a parrot that, when I went to visit my mentor, his Caiques were under a roofing. And there were no sides. It was just a roofing. Compared to, see, now that's the loudness. That's pretty loud. Can they hear you in Timbuktu? Yeah? Yeah? Is that loud enough? Whereas his other cages are all open, except there's some part of it that's covered so that the parrots get to choose whether they want to be in the shade or in the sun. But the Caiques, like some sun might have come in the side. You know, think of like a carport. That's a good way to think of how the shading is. So like some sun might come in the side, but not necessarily and not a lot. And I asked about that, and I was like, you know, Tony, how come your Caiques are more covered? And he said, well, because in nature, they would be in heavier forests and they wouldn't be getting as much direct light. And he said, as a matter of fact, their eyes will turn more red if you have them out in the sun a lot of the time. So I thought that was really fascinating. Now, it's of course important to remember that with parrots, they do need, number one, fresh air. I know that that seems like, who doesn't? But I think it's really important. You know, fresh air just, that's health. Number 2, don't forget that UV and UB light that comes from the sun and doesn't go through most windows, because most windows have UV and UV protection, that light is necessary for them to produce vitamin D. Okay, yeah, sorry. And they need that to then absorb calcium. On top of that, and that's super important because they use calcium for their bones, for their beak, their nails, and their feathers. Feathers are made mostly of calcium. Or at least it's a key ingredient. So it's super important for them. On top of that, their feathers get disinfected by the sun. So your parrot has a lot more cleanliness than you realize that happens, and a lot more health that happens because of their direct sunlight. Again, these guys wouldn't necessarily be in direct sunlight, but they're still going to get that indirect light. They're still going to get the UV and UV that bounces around when they're outside. So it's still important. So it's kind of like this weird thing where I think that if you were in an apartment or a townhouse, but you had a balcony and your Caiques could be out on the balcony some of the time, then maybe they would make a great apartment parrot, because maybe outside the noise wouldn't matter. And you have to kind of gauge how much noise. Like, I don't know if I would feel comfortable if I was in an apartment getting a Caique. If I was in a townhome and, like I said, I was like at the end, or I knew my neighbors and they're like, yeah, we don't care. Or the townhomes had like really good sound protection between the units, then I think I'd feel comfortable. And if I had some sort of outdoor screened area where they could go and get some fresh air. So yes, they can certainly be kind of loud. I don't feel like they're loud all the time. I'm not sure what parrot is. Parrots, and this one you can generalize across the board. I don't think I've ever found an exception. Parrots are basically awake with the sun and asleep with the sun. So when the sun rises, they start to chitter and they start to get more active. And then when the sun sets, they start to quiet down. So that's one nice thing. Like at night, you're not going to have any noise. So generally speaking, one thing that can happen is your parrots may be loud during the day while your neighbors are at work. But if your neighbor works like at night or on the weekends, that could be a problem. So those are some things you can consider when you're thinking about whether or not a Caique parrot is too loud for you, and whether or not you think they would be good for an apartment. Like I said, I do feel like they're a little bit on the noisier side. They're not as noisy as some parrots, but they are amazing parrots. This is a parrot that, to me, if you don't know how to enjoy your life, they will teach you. That's their quintessential essence. Huh, Catsy? He's so happy to be out. He's like looking around. They usually come out in the morning. We're out like at noon. It's a special outing for their video. Huh, cats? Yeah. All right. As always, thank you for joining me in this blissful Caique video. That's how they pronounce Caique in like Australia or somewhere, and I love it. Caique. Now my Caike's left my video. Come back. Come back. If you have any questions about parrots, please be sure to comment below. If you enjoy my sharing my bliss with you and sharing my parrots with you, please be sure to like and subscribe, and we will catch you in the next blissful video. Right, Catsy? Catch you next time.